Okay, you got it? Fantastic. I've put it on the other screen already for you. So all you have to do is go forwards and you'll be fine. Okay?
This story quickly, which is the combined wealth, this is according to Oxfam, of the world's 85 richest people is equal to the 3.5 billion poorest people.
It's fantastic. And this is a great thing because it inspires everybody, gets the motivation to look up to the 1% and say, I want to become one of those people. I'm going to fight hard to get up to the top. This is fantastic news, and of course I applaud it. What can be wrong with this?
Really?
Yes, really.
So somebody living on
I celebrate capitalism.
$1 a day in Africa is getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be Bill Gates.
That's the motivation everybody needs.
Only thing between me and
I'm
that
not
guy
against
is
charity.
motivation. I just need to pull up my socks.
I am
oh,
not,
wait, I don't have socks.
Look, don't tell me that you want to redistribute wealth again. That's never going to happen, okay?
You know what? You take a simple stat like this, which is neither good nor bad. It's just a fact.
It's a celebratory stat. I'm very excited about it. I'm wonderful to see it happen. I tell kids every day, what's wrong with this?
Comes up at a cocktail party.
No, Amanda, what's wrong with this statement?
One possible response to it.
If you work hard, you might be stinking rich one day.
We're talking about people in extreme abject poverty. That's how you get 3.5 billion.
No, we're not. You were just talking about really rich people.
No.
Okay, so that was Kevin O'Leary, a Canadian businessman, and probably someone you would not want in charge of the world. And those were his ideas on human motivation. He claims that money is what motivates people, and especially the prospect of being among the world's top % richest, which unfortunately seems to be quite a common worldview today. But is that true? In Zeitgeist spirit, we're going to look at what the actual evidence says, because as we obviously know, majority opinion or common sense sometimes turns out to be incorrect. First, some psychological experiments which actually say that rewards can reduce already existing motivation. In a 1971 experiment, Edward Deasy had students assembling puzzle cubes, first without rewards, then for money, and finally without rewards again. And he observed them secretly, what they were doing in their free time. And he noticed that in their free time, they would happily play with the puzzle cubes. However, after the reward condition and when rewards were removed, they would work on the puzzles less. They suddenly had less motivation to work on puzzles. Another similar experiment was done with children who had an intrinsic interest in drawing. This means that they like to draw for its own sake, just for the fun of it, not because of any external motivation. Then some of the children were given a reward certificate on the condition of continuing to draw. And afterwards, they showed less interest in drawing than those who never got any rewards, and also less interest than they themselves had had at the beginning. And the researchers called this effect overjustification. If you give an additional reason to do something that is already interesting, that makes people think that the task is not worth doing without the rewards. So in other words, the focus shifts from doing the task to just getting the reward. Now you might say that, well, motivation isn't that important as long as things get done and things get done well. And obviously offering rewards should make people try harder and get better results. So Sam Glucksberg tested this with a simple puzzle. Participants were given a box of tacks, a candle, a matchbox, and they were told to attach the candle to the wall. Can you think of how you would do this? Half of the participants were told that they would receive a monetary reward if they were among the quickest to solve the problem. This is a simplified version of the puzzle that was given to another group of participants. There's one crucial difference. The box of tacks has already been emptied, and in this version, the puzzle is really easy to solve. So The results showed that for the first task, which was more difficult and required some creative thinking, performance suffers if rewards are involved. This could again be that the focus shifts from the task to getting the money, or they might be getting too excited about the bonus reward. On the other hand, they did do better in this version, in the simple one, when they were offered rewards, because the task is really easy. So it would seem that it's okay to keep paying people for simple manual tasks. However, as you all know, this is not very relevant anymore because you have things like self-checkouts and self-driving cars, and in some places in Asia you even have robot restaurants. And these are just the sort of, so all that's left for humans to do are the mentally demanding creative tasks, such as building and maintaining those robots. And these are the sort of tasks that Glucksberg showed are hindered by the promise of rewards. And in case you're wondering whether increasing the reward amount might work, there was an experiment done by Dan Ariely and colleagues in rural India, where they could offer the participants money that to them was worth a year's salary. And they found that performance suffered most when they were offered the biggest amount. So perhaps when all you can think about is what you're going to do with your big bonus once you get it, you might not get much actual work done. One thing that all these experiments had in common was that a tangible reward, such as money or a reward certificate, was offered on condition of the participant doing something. And even the biggest critics of this line of research agree that this is one condition where performance does suffer. So what should we do while we're in a system where you do need money to live? Dan Pink, in his book Drive, suggests that companies should pay their employees well and unconditionally, so that the issue of money would be off the table and they could focus on their work. And the same idea could be applied to whole countries, which is what the proponents of basic income are suggesting. They believe that if you provide everyone with enough money to cover basic needs, then people would still continue to work. They would work on what they love doing because of people's natural desire to make the world a better place, while being stuck in an unrewarding job just for the sake of being alive more often hinders their ability to do so. This is similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs idea, that there are some basic needs, but once they're taken care of, and people have security about their job, house, and so on, they can focus on higher needs, which are relationships, self-esteem, and self-actualization. But if there's uncertainty about the future, then that prevents the individual from achieving their true potential. On top of this pyramid of needs is self-actualization, which essentially means contributing something useful and lasting to society, which is quite a different view from those who think that people only want to work when externally incentivized. Back to the idea of basic income. So what happens if people's basic and security needs are taken care of? Thankfully, this experiment has been carried out a few times in the world. Here's an early example from Canada. At that time, North American governments were quite enthusiastic about the idea. They were even thinking about expanding this all over the United States and Canada. So this pilot project was run from 1974 to 79, but unfortunately stopped due to a recession, and all the data from the project was archived because the government thought it had failed. But they were finally discovered and analyzed in 2009. And the results were quite interesting. They showed minimal effects on employment. The only groups that worked substantially less were new mothers and teenagers, because, well, taking care of children and studying are very important. And also, as a result, graduation rates went up. Also, people had more opportunities to choose the sort of work they were doing. And very importantly, hospital visits went down and mental health improved, which actually saves the country some money. A more recent pilot study was carried out in a small settlement in Namibia in the years 2008 and 2009. The results here were really dramatic. When at the start of the experiment, food poverty levels were at 76%, then they went down to 16%. So essentially, people didn't have to worry about food anymore, and they could have stopped working at all. But to the contrary, employment actually went up by 10% because people now had money to start their own businesses and they had money to buy from those businesses. This shows how even a small boost to resources helps people put them to good use rather than increasing dependency on the free money, which the critics were predicting. In addition, parents could now pay their kids' school fees, so school attendance doubled, and dropout rate went to almost zero, which was largely because the children were no longer malnutritioned. Also, crime rates went down by 42% because people no longer had to steal from each other. Unfortunately, though, the Namibian government isn't planning to make this nationwide, even though there were calculations that it would only cost 3% of their GDP. However, there's a government somewhere in the world where it might be possible. In Switzerland, there is still the old tradition of direct democracy, and they hold regular referenda on major issues. To propose a referendum, you need 100,000 signatures, which is what the proponents of basic income have done. The votes will be held in the next 2 or 3 years, and it would be an interesting experiment to see. Would the Swiss people become desensitized and stop working? The evidence so far suggests that probably not, but if the evidence so far has not been enough, there are plenty of more examples. And in addition to all of these, various statistics show that between 30 to 50% of people volunteer at least once a month. And remember, all of this happens while they still have day jobs. So after all these examples, you might be wondering, what is it then that motivates people? I'll give you 4 theories, which probably all have a lot of truth in it, and there's a bit of overlap. First of all, there's the Maslow theory mentioned before. Then there's Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory, which lists the elements as competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And large emphasis is on autonomy, being able to choose what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and who to do it with. They say that this also explains the previous experiments because getting someone to do something for a reward is essentially a form of control. It's trying to control the people's behavior by offering them something that they really need. And often in workplaces, also the other needs for autonomy are not covered because you don't often have choice of what sort of work you do or how. However, in some more progressive workplaces, they do try to increase autonomy. For example, Google gives employees 20% of time to work on whatever they want, and from this you have things like Gmail and Google News. Also, Post-it notes were developed by the stationery company 3M by letting the employees come up with whatever they wanted. Dan Pink slightly modified the 3 words, and his version is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we'll come back to mastery and purpose on the next few slides. Finally, Alfie Kohn, in his book Punished by the Rewards, uses 3 C's: collaboration, content, and choice, to which you could possibly add challenge. He also quotes this fellow named Hertzberg, who said, "If you want people to do a good job, give them a good job to do." And idleness, indifference, and irresponsibility are perfectly valid responses to absurd work. This is from the film Office Space. So coming back to mastery, there's a theory by a Hungarian psychologist with a ridiculously difficult name, which I'm not going to pronounce. He describes a state of optimal experience called flow, which means that you're completely immersed in your task. You almost lose sense of the passing of time, and you even forget if you're hungry or thirsty. Kind of like the quotes by Isaac Asimov, "Nothing interferes with my concentration. You could put an orgy in my office and I wouldn't look up. Well, maybe once." According to the theory, the state of flow will be reached if the difficulty of task matches the person's skills. So if the task is just a little bit challenging, because if it's too easy, then it will be boring. If it's too hard, it will produce more anxiety than anything. And studies show that this state is 3 times as likely to happen at work than in free time. And also people are often happier in workflow than in leisure activities that do not produce a flow state, such as watching TV. Which creates quite an odd paradox, because people still spend an awful lot of time watching TV. And this brings up an important point that people often don't realize how much they can enjoy work. And they think that work must be boring just because it's work, which is an attitude worth challenging. The importance of purpose is pretty much self-evident. If you have a purpose, then you have a reason to do something, and then you must have motivation to do it. But as we said about common sense before, it's still worth looking at it scientifically. Dan Ariely has tested this with experiments with Lego Bionicles and paper shredders. In the Bionicle experiment, participants were instructed to put together Lego Bionicles, and they were paid decreasing amounts of money to do it, but everyone was paid the same. However, there were 2 conditions. In the first condition, as soon as they built a Bionicle, the experimenter would take it apart again. In the second condition, the Bionicles would stay there, and the participants could see all the previous Bionicles they had built. And in the second condition, they built on average more Bionicles than in the other condition. Also, with paper shredders, they did a task on paper, and then in the first condition, the experimenter would acknowledge the work they had done, scan it in, and put it in a pile. In the second condition, the experimenter ignored what they had done, just put it in a pile. And in the third condition, they ran it through a paper shredder. As you can guess, in the third condition, the participants lost their motivation quite quickly, whereas if their work was acknowledged, then they had more motivation to do it. And in fact, having to do a pointless job is so unpleasant that it has actually been used as a punishment. First, in the Greek myth of Sisyphus, who as a punishment had to roll a boulder up a hill, but as soon as he almost reached the top, the boulder would come down again and he had to start over. And in the real world, it has been used in prisons, where prisoners had to dig holes and fill them up again. That was before the institutions realized that they could actually profit off the prisoners by making them do real work. So it's no wonder that many people in today's jobs lack motivation and hate going to work every day, because there's so many jobs that simply don't seem to have a purpose, sometimes jobs we could even do without, such as sandwich board advertisements. But often jobs are even created for the sake of creating jobs, just because of the way the monetary system works, or malfunctions more like. Sadly, though, sometimes the most purposeful jobs don't even pay you a single penny, or if they do, then they pay you much less than the other jobs. But on the bright side, people do them anyway. So what I would like to leave you with is a few ideas on what to do with all this info. First, obviously, you can use all these examples whenever someone claims that without money nothing would get done, which is something we all probably hear a lot. Secondly, I'd like you to ask yourself what motivates you. What is it that you do in your free time that you feel has a purpose, that fulfills you, that challenges you? And if there isn't anything like that right now, maybe you can think of something that you could be doing. Because often it's best to lead by example, and that would also be, you could also be yet another contribution to the growing evidence that people do things just because of intrinsic motivation, not because of money. And finally, you could ask your friends the same questions. What motivates them? Would they still be working if a resource-based economy happened, or if they received a basic income? Or would they just sit on their couch all day? Well, after all, even Kevin from the beginning video, should be a picture here. There we go. Even Kevin from the beginning video is occasionally intrinsically motivated. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Is there any way we can get your presentation on, if we contact you?
Yes, it will be put up on the internet later.
Brilliant, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, it sounds pretty feasible, enforcing what you're enforcing, but realistically, how real is it? How will you implement next year on the globe?
You mean basic income?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know how, because, well, the idea is that this would replace a lot of the current bureaucracy about getting welfare, and also some of this money could be gotten from consumption taxes and so on. But I guess the calculation would be up to every country themselves to see where they would get this money from. And well, as was also mentioned, because it brings down crime rate and hospital visits, then countries would save a bit of money that way. But I don't know if there has been any calculations that would prove that this would be possible. So for now, it's just an idea that has been carried out in a few places and seems to be working.
When you say a few places, you allude to what on the globe?
Well, there was the Canadian one and the Namibian one. There have been also a few in India, but that's about it.
The Swiss are going to implement this next year, I believe, as well, in Switzerland, yeah. They're the first country to do that.
We could easily implement this here. If there was a shift in our tax system is currently totally skewed to the poor and to the middle classes. If that tax system was shifted to total economic activity levy system, in other words, 1% on every bank transfer, commercial, in this country, our tax raise would go from 500 billion a year to 1.5 trillion a year. Then that would free enough money up to give everybody a living wage of 7,500 a year. It's possible.
Thank you.
You have a question?
I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to know more about the research, because that's something that needs to be brought out. There are a group of us that actually are lobbying for that to occur, and there's a method by which we can actually bring that about in this country quickly.
Can I just say something now? Can I just say something? Yeah. If you look at, there's some books by a guy called Alfie Kohn. I don't know if you know him, and there's books by Daniel Pink as well. They cover this subject really, really in depth. So they're worth reading, yeah?
Hello there. First of all, it's the first time that I'm here, and I have just a question. What you are going to do just to change the situation? What is, for changing how things are going in the world, in our society? Because I read a lot about you. I read a lot about even about Marx, and but in 200 years nothing's changed. The things just get worse. What can we do?
Do you mean about people's motivation?
Yeah, no, I know, I understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say, and I agree with you. I agree with your project, with everything, but because there are a lot. I'm 30. I'm 30 years old, and there are a lot of years that I'm hearing about these kind of things. I'm from Italy, and but people usually they just talk about these kind of things, but then they don't change anything. Yeah, okay, all right. The question is, what are you planning to do in the real world? I mean, because we are always talking about these kind of things, and there are like 10 years that I'm hearing about these kind of things. But what are you going to do?
Where are you? I can't see you.
I'm
Wave.
Here. I'm here.
Do a dance? Okay, good. Valid question. I'm answering because it's not on motivation anymore. You could also begin by raising the question, why do you know about this stuff? So it's already available. That's good. That's already, by the way, a massive step. I deliberately spent the first half an hour of my presentation explaining the emerging decentralized networks that nobody shouted for and demanded for. They self-assemble through the collective will of the people, given the kinds of decentralized means there are. You could, 10 years ago, have demanded, how are we going to create a decentralized funding network for people to individually be able to lobby for stuff? We're going to have to get a load of people together. Don't need to do that anymore, Kickstarter. And the reason for that, the underlying logic of the internet the way it is. And that has given birth to the more growing understanding. I'm glad that you're 30 and know about this, man. It took me forever to learn about this kind of stuff. And that stuff is speeding up. And even though it's really tough because the indentured, top-down capitalists still are winning, the great thing is there's an emerging life ground of uncentrally controllable efforts in all directions, from boring things like currency to fascinating things like couch surfing. And they gradually cut the edges off what you consider to be an irremovable force. It is happening already. So don't get too complicated about, we need to stand up and shout about this stuff. That's an old model that was developed for shouting at the capitalist. You don't need that anymore now, and yes, it is slow, and yes, it doesn't have a leader, and no, it doesn't have a complaint letter you can write. It's something that needs to be more broadly disseminated. It's a different kind of enemy you have now, and you're shouting the old Marxists.
I know.
What? Why ask the question, then? But let's chat outside. There's a break, definitely. Actually, while I'm here, thank you so much. Would you, anybody else? Sorry. Anybody else specifically on motivation? Specifically on motivation,
please keep
not
the question
on
about
the general system of world affairs.
Please keep the question about motivation, yeah?
Sorry. Basically, this is not a question, it's information regarding minimum wages and taxation. There's an excellent book by a British economist called Michael Oberauer. And the title of the book is called The Grip of Debt. It's an unusual title, but it's actually about minimum wage and appropriate taxation. It's very hard to get in the public library, but it's still available at Amazon and other places. It's a really good book, and it really talks about minimum wage and equality in taxation. Thank you.
There's someone behind you.
Hi there. Yeah, nice talk, but these concepts have been around for a long time, and even if you watch Star Trek, there's an episode which deals with motivation for people in the future. But one example that I always like to quote when people mention this type of utopic sort of payment system is if a main sewer, for example, bursts, and through the night you see 2-3 guys, usually guys, up to their knees in excrement, working through the night with the rain pouring down on them. The reason they're there is because they've been paid damn good money to be down there, and they think, well, I can work down here for a day or whatever, and I'll earn what a lot of people earn in a week in a nice desk-bound job, reading articles or writing stuff. So we do have the reason we have the system that we have at the moment is because it rewards people that do difficult and dangerous work more highly than people that are sat behind a desk.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, okay, there are exceptions to that, but in the main, people who are doing normal manual work, dangerous work, are paid well for it. Sure.
Mel, can I answer this? Yeah, I'm an electrician, yeah? I do real work, yeah? Well, I used to be, but I'm Listen, look, we would do that work. Why? Because it benefits everybody. It benefits you. Even in the real world now, if I go to an old person's house, they've got a problem, I won't charge them, or I'll charge them a lot less. Yeah? It works because we want to do it. Because, look, can I give you a recent example of this? Right? We've had the flooding in London, yeah? Okay? Now, we're near where I live, in Teddington. It's been flooded. There's been politicians on the radio, people on the radio complaining about politicians. What are they doing down here? This isn't a political problem. This is a civil engineering and flood management problem. And the councillor, who's the link between the politicians and her local representatives, was complaining on the exact same issue, that central government wasn't doing anything, and what it was doing, all she was communicating the fact that they weren't supplying money and they'd failed to manage the problem, okay? But what happened? She said the best thing that's come out of this, everybody in this area has been flooded, but what's happened is that neighbours who probably didn't speak to each other previously have now spoken to each other, and they're all fucking helping each other to clear this floodwater. Don't walk around with that idea that, look, people help each other. It's what we're here. We're still here, regardless of this system. I do this for nothing. Most of the people I work with, we do this for nothing. Why? Because it means something. When people talk to me about in the real world, I live in the real world. I've spent a long time working in the real world. I've worked in the cold, in the dirt, in the shit, right? But I do it because it needs to be done. It's necessary. We have to have it. Yeah? We have to have hospitals. Yeah? My wife had a minor stroke in mid-November, and due to science and technology, she's recovered fully. But not just that, it was the hard work of the medical staff who get paid pittance for what they do. And here endeth the first lesson. Sorry, Mel. Any more questions?
Yeah, well, we've got a massively parasitic financial system, and the people on these enormous rewards for actually doing nothing of any value. The only valuable thing that the financial service industry does is to run the payments transfer system as a technical function, running cash centers and just keeping the money flowing. The question is, how can we actually dismantle this, cut this down to size, so that the financial sector only finances things that we really need? I mean, which is only about 1/10 of the volume of transactions it actually now does. So how do you cut this lot down to size, and how do you make sure that the people in it are earning appropriate money, which should be fairly low, because they're not taking any personal risks. A lot of them are not particularly well qualified either.
Do you have an answer?
That was more of a financial question, yeah? Okay. True. We will have a Q&A and we'll come back to you about that, yeah? Okay, definitely. Okay. We know that's a nonsense. Anyway, look, we've got to go now. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you, Mel.
Brilliant.
Isn't she wonderful? Yes, she is. Next up, we have, very briefly, a gentleman who's not on the list because he's special. It is, in fact, Lee, who produced our opening video there. So do you want me to start this for you right now, mate? No. Okay, right, good. I will, Lee Swords, ladies and gentlemen, Lee Swords.
Have the lights up, please. Have the lights. Yeah. All of the lights. Cheers. All you lot. So, did you all enjoy the intro video then? Well, I'm actually making a new video right now, as you can see. And I'm just wondering if you could help me out with it. So, it's just going to be me speaking into the camera for YouTube, and then I'm going to spin the camera around and I want everyone to go mental. If you want to do a practice, we can do a practice as well. This is Lee Hamster.com for being 2014-04-11, introducing the XP experienceitintrinsic.com series. Yes, I'll try that again. This is leehamster.com for period 2. This is leehamster.com for period 2014-04-11 for the experience.com series. So I'll just tell you what the xbuni.com thing
Don't
is.
monetise it, yeah?
What?
Don't put ads. Do not put monetisation on that video.
That's how I make my money. Yeah, so I'm going to play this short video now to explain what xbuni.com actually is, if I can work this thing. Oh yeah.
Have you ever wanted to just go to school, college, or university without the headache of enrolling in time, how much it'd cost, or if there's a place for you? Maybe you'd just like to do a course in your own time and at your own pace, in the comfort of your own home. Or if you'd just like to learn more or teach a subject. Well, this is the place for you! Introducing xbuni.com.
xbuni.com is a 24/7, 365 online and offline school, college, university where you can learn and teach at any time
For free. Courses range from absolutely anything to absolutely everything you can think of. But to give you an idea of the main subjects we offer, relating them to absolutely everyone, we have enjoying every moment, making sure everyone gets what they want, working together to make things better every day. And if you're not satisfied by those, here's a list of all the other courses we have available so far. All courses can be done in a variety of methods, whether it be learning directly from our team on or offline, social networking, outdoor classes, one-to-one tuition, indoor lectures or workshops, and many more. Whoa, Jesus. If you'd like to see if there's classes near you, please go to xbuni.com and look at our campus. Available classes are marked in blue. Alternatively, you can create your own class or profile on campus by going to the Enroll page. Here is my profile as an example. By the way, if you don't see any classes near you when you've been on campus, we encourage everyone, or more specifically, you, to start your own. Please do start your own classes. It's what xbuni.com is made for, learning and teaching. So why not try xbuni.com today? Just go to the site, see what's available, or get in contact with us for more information on how to get involved. Thanks for your time and attention here today. We love you all. Take care. Love xbuni.com. Have you ever wanted to just go to school,
And it loops there. Cheers for the intro music, Rao, if you're still here. Yeah, Rob's Constellations for the intro video. Yeah, so the three main things I want to talk about here now is making sure that we're all able to enjoy ourselves with whatever the fuck we're doing, because it's just a bit like everyone's getting on stage like, oh shit, like, you know, I want everyone to be able to actually teach each other, to be able to have the confidence to, I mean, I'm bricking it as far as, you know, you're all aware. So it is a struggle to actually get up onto stage, but I think if people like Ben or anyone else with the confidence to be able to teach these things and actually enjoy doing those things, and then getting it all onto the internet is actually the step forward to get into anything that we actually want, which is the second part to the thing that I mentioned in the video, which is making sure that we all get what we want. And so if we don't work together on doing that, then I don't think there's any point in carrying on, really, as a species. I don't know, that's a bit deep, but bit of a bold statement, Lee, nice one. But yeah, I really do give a shit about all of you here today, and I hope you're enjoying this. And if you're not, then die.
You know, there is a value sometimes in not practicing what we're about to do on stage, and fucking know that was going to happen. Well done.